And I'm very glad to be able to welcome 5 experts here on our panel that I would like to introduce to you. On the far left, we've got Ms. Maria Pütz-Willems, who is an editor-in-chief. In 2005, she founded Hospitality Inside, the online mag, and she is the editor-in-chief and the managing director. So, welcome. No, I'm just the editor-in-chief, actually. Next to her, we've got Thomas Hartung, who is also a specialized journalist, and he founded Globi.de in 2008. He's the chief editor and I think the managing director. I think this is true for you. Globi.de is, of course, well known for their newsletters, and then we've got Pascal Brückmann, who used to work as a travel journalist and who is head of the Department of Traveling at the Welt, and he's also the product manager traveler for the Welt Media Group. Sitting next to him, we've got Lars and Nielsen, who has been working as a journalist for more than 20 years in different media, especially for Gruner and Jahr publishing houses, and he's now the chief editor of Saison. And last but not least, Mr. Romanus Otte, who also worked for almost 20 years as a journalist. When I last looked, he was the vice editor-in-chief of online publications of the Axel Springer Verlag, the Welt Digital. And he's also responsible for Hamburger Abendblatt and Berliner Morgenpost. So you can already tell by looking at the careers of the people who are sitting here. Well, you know, people changing and switching places, you know, that people are actually getting jobs in the digital field. I think the crisis is rather well known, the crisis of print journalism and the digital era and its impact on this industry. We all know that the figures are going down in terms of the readers, and that also ad turnover is going down. The Frankfurter Rundschau, for example, is now insolvent, and the readers are moving into the internet and the content, as well as the advertising budgets are also going into the internet. That's why the print world is looking for new business models, also in the field of digital technologies. But it's not only the traveling industry that is now asking themselves where their content will end up and which readers will be able and willing to pay for their content, and whether travel journalism is about to become extinct. I think this is quite feasible to enter into the discussion by looking at the different business models, because you will see that there are major differences with a view to the people who are sitting here, and it also goes to show how heterogeneous the market has become. Let us start with Ms. Pütz-Willems. Hospitality Inside is a pure online mag. You are writing for the upper management of hoteliers, and your teams, or rather your subjects, are rather specific accordingly, and you do not place any ads, and you only fund your publication through yearly subscriptions. That sounds really nice, but the question is, does it really work? Is it economically viable? Yes, it is, and it's very interesting, and we are actually economically viable in the meantime. If you just look at the costs of the editing offices, of course, you always have the overhead costs, no matter what you do. When we started out in 2005, people were rather skeptical, and before that, I used to work as a freelance journalist for 16 years, and back then, you know, 13 of my old 15 bosses said, you'll never do that. But now we have readers in more than 20 countries, and we are rather accepted because of the quality of our content, and I think it was the right move, you know. We've got a relatively small target group for hotel managers, and we opened our portfolio because of the fact that we also offer our content on English, and then we also hide everything behind a firewall, and we are now very consistent in terms of not being findable on Google, and we also place the emphasis on expert reports, just as if the management colleagues were talking to each other. So over the first 3 years, it was really very hard, to be quite frank, but then I think it was the word of mouth propaganda that actually helped to spread our publication. The main problem in the beginning was to actually convince the readers to perhaps deviate from their usual paths, and you know that you have to go online, that you have to log in with a password, and you also had to explain why they should pay for that content, you know, because so much on the net is just free of charge. So we needed to convince people, which was not quite that easy, but I think we really had enough stamina. And how many readers do you have? Because you only have yearly subscribers. Well, let me answer this indirectly. We've got hundreds of readers. Of course, we would like to have more readers. We are operating with the objective of reaching 1,000 readers. Well, and when will you achieve that? Well, we are rather relaxed about that because we found new sources of income, and in that respect, so we do not really have any real target. So you just said 1,000 readers, but that I think really goes to show that you are working in a niche of the market, and why it really is working. We'll come back to that in a moment. But let's move on to Mr. Hartung. You also have a purely digital publication, but you have a different business model. You are not free of ads. Your content is free of charge, and you are, a news aggregator, which means that you don't produce your own content. You just link to the content produced by third parties, and your funding model is based on advertising alone. The question is it economically viable? It is, yes, and it has been around for more than 3 years, and if it were not economically viable, we'd have been gone down a time ago. But we are not a news aggregator, we write ourselves, it's... We don't do the research ourselves, but the value added, the service that we offer is that we scan the news environment, but not using machines, but our own skills. And we know our target group, and we actually filter through what can be found in the online world in terms of news and background stories, blogs that could be interesting for our readers. And this is the added value that we produce, and it actually is the kind of choice that we then present. And we formulate the things that we think is important in 2 or 3 phrases. So you just formulate the teasers, if you will. It is very important with a view to the law on copyright and everything. Let's not go into that detail, but you then offer links to third-party web pages. Yes, well, but the difference compared to Google News, for example, is that we just do not, integrate other content, but we have our own focus. If, for example, in the Welt there is a headline and there is something else in an article that would be interesting for our readers, then we would not post the headline, but another snippet from that text. Let's move on to Mr. Brückmann from WAZ. You are rather skeptical about online business, as far as I can tell, and that also is due to the fact that only 2 to 3% of the travel turnover of the WAZ group is being generated online, but your print business is still doing very good. And this is also due to the fact of the massive restructuring in 2005. And until then, you were director of the Department for Traveling. Now you are product manager traveling. And I think it really is quite telling with a view to where the WAZ is heading for. So now you're operating profitably again. And I know that in the beginning you were not in favor of this restructuring, but why do you think was it worthwhile to do this for the WAZ? Well, first of all, I'd have to say that we were always economically viable in the field of traveling when it comes to the WAZ. But back then, in 2005, we had risk analyses that we carried out, and we saw what kind of risk we were faced with strategically, and we quite deliberately then decided to reorganize. And one component was, of course, the overall issue of costs that we managed to get a good and tight grip on in that context. But another issue was competitiveness through innovation, through new product developments. And because of our organizational units for product management, we are now able to actually carry out operations in a very targeted fashion. And if I look now at our turnover development, then I can really say that we did everything right. Of course, I cannot give you the absolute figures, but in percentages, over the last 5 years, we managed to increase our turnover by approximately 25%. Yes, in the print field, and when it comes to traveling and travel journalism. And I think everyone knowing about the advertising market in the print business knows that this is still a very respectable percentage, But I do not want to obscure the fact that in spite of the fact that we think that we have a very good organizational structure and a good team, that there are still major challenges lying ahead of us, and that we have not yet found all the right answers to the questions. But what I can already tell is, and I think I can speak also on behalf of other major publishing houses, that we haven't yet tapped into all the different potentials and opportunities yet. So I think yes, we do have a crisis in print, but we also have major opportunities lying ahead of us. And the question for the publishing houses now is whether they want to actually maintain traveling journalism as a relevant market, and if yes, whether they'll be willing to do something, invest in this area. And I think that there are still major potentials, many opportunities, but you really have to get going, and you have to make a clear stance here. You can't do this on the side. We'll get back to this later, but as far as I understand you, I think the publishing houses still would want to follow that, to pursue that road? Or what was your answer? Well, I think that the publishing houses all have to answer this question individually. But what I can see is, especially when, looking at the weekly competition reports, then I can tell that, especially with the view to the regional papers, there is a massive loss in terms of travel journalism in those regional papers. And sometimes these, travel sections do not really deserve that name. It's not really an autonomous product any longer. It's just 2 or 3 pages filled with ads. But I think that the different publishing houses all have different, starting points, starting situations. It depends on the sources that you have, right on your doorstep. For example, if you've got a paper in the Uckermark with a circulation of 80,000, then the traveling journalism market is not relevant. But as a media group, for example, and if I then have the most important source market right in front of my doorstep, and if I can have an outreach of 2 million readers, then this, of course, is a business area that you would not abandon lightly. Yes, we'll come back to the printing era later on, or the printing industry. We would like to talk about the digital, of course, but we just heard that it was a plus of 25%, and I mean, this is something that you would be dreaming about. Saison is now appearing in its 24th year, and in its comparison to 2008, your circulation dropped by some 20%. Last year, the situation was rather more stable. You didn't make any losses, but my question is, do you still sleep soundly with 20% losses over 4 years?
Well, I was rather satisfied. When I started my job 5 years ago, the manager at that time said, don't worry, we will have the same sales numbers as today in the future as well. But at present, I have to say that we're faring very well, because our business model, which is selling a travel newspaper at the kiosk, is something that works rather well. We really do make progress. The 1st of January, we had the opportunity to raise prices by 20%, and we did still sell more than before. I believe that this is the right path we are following, because we are offering quality. We have to have an image of high quality. We have to be self-assured so that people are willing to pay more than €5 or €6. It's still rather affordable, and apparently this works well. What is important for me is that once every year, it is always in February, we do a title story, the 100 best hotels in Europe. And of course, all these hotels, you can find them as well in the internet. But the customers we serve, they do not want to be in the internet every evening and search for hotels. They want that we do this job for them, and we find the right hotel. So this is a newspaper, that's a magazine that sells very well every year. So we have to offer certain quality, and then people tend to honor that also. The selling numbers were stable last year. I do not believe that in 20 years I will retire and still being a print reporter exclusively. So, of course, the selling numbers go down slowly, but we will start on that point, on the selling numbers. I'm very happy to have Mr. Otte close to me, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to talk about digital at all. You are manager of Welt Digital since 2000, and you're also responsible for the Berliner Morgenpost. We all know that the Axel Springer edition publishing house has for the first time showed the results for 2012, and for the first time they did 1.2 billion turnover with digital newspaper, more than with print media, in also selling portals as digital.de and so on. But Welt Online, for example, in December, you were the first big newspaper who broke the paywall in the internet. 20 articles per month are for free. Then it's $12.99 for a subscription. This is in theory the case. There are also other possibilities, but first of all, we want to talk about theory. Since you have lowered this paywall, have broken down this paywall, did that have any repercussions on your reaching out to the customers? Not really. We did not really have any effects on that. We could still reach the market. We have just published the figures for February. Of course, there we always have a little bit less range, a little bit less coverage, because February has less days. So that's a simple reason for that. But we are at the same level as FAZ, Zeit, Spiegel Online, and so on. It's almost balanced, but of course the coverage has to go down. If coverage wouldn't go down at all, this would be certainly not a positive result for us either. But we are really focusing on both sides. We want to be a mass media with a large coverage, but on the same time, we also want to slowly familiarize our readers with paying models. And in January and February, from our side of view, the results were very encouraging. Well, if the coverage didn't go down as much as you expected, is that due to the fact that theory is not equivalent with practice? Is there still a possibility to avoid paying, or is it a proof for you that this could work? Well, theory and practice are always different. I do not think that this is due to what you just said. What do we do? We want our newspaper to be reachable from outside completely without having to pay, first of all. So Welt Online you can reach by social media, by Google, but always also by direct links. The first click on our page is always for free. If you get there via Google or via the recommendation of a friend and you want to read an article, you can read this article. So this is not an avoidance of payment. This is what we wanted to do. And when we introduced that, we had a rather funny discussion also concerning social networks with people who said they wanted to give complicated tips, recommendations to people, how they could avoid the payment. I participated in this discussion, and I simply said, the only thing you have to do is to erase, to stop the cookies from your computer. So what we want to do is to make a fair offer, especially for those people where we expect they would be willing to pay. Well, there are also people who say that they are very surprised that all this is free of charge. But we want to make a good offer to those people, especially who are willing to pay, and our experiences are very positive and encouraging. The Bild-Zeitung as well will no longer be for free. There will be a paywall. Why do you think the paywall is the only possibility, the only right path you can follow? I don't think that is the only path, the only solution. For us, it was a consequent and correct way. Why do we do that for all the journalistic products at Axel Springer? Because we want to offer a business model for quality journalism in the digital era. One day, in the far future, the brand Die Welt will certainly also have to be able to be sold without any printed product, without paper, so to say. And this is only possible if we develop now a consequent, a cohesive business model. And to do so, we need to be based on several pillars. One of these pillars is the advertising market. What we do now is not due to skepticism towards the advertising market, not at all, but we need a second pillar. And the second pillar is the paid content, but I prefer to say it's distribution revenue, because this is what we want to do. Mr. Brückmann, you are rather skeptical concerning the online services. No, I'm not skeptical as such. I only wanted to say, in the context of this discussion, that we need to strengthen our performance, and this print is still profitable, often very profitable. But digital content, of course, is an important market of the future. And 10 years ago, unfortunately, publishers committed a sin by offering their services for free, and it is very difficult to come back on that now, to make a turn. And I think it's a good idea that one of the big publishers now has the courage to open this discussion, even if there are many an avoidance strategy. But of course, you can have better results if you accept to reduce your coverage. But I would like us to offer a journalistic content that has to be paid for, and that at one day we also can ask the consumer to pay for this journalistic content. It's a cultural question. It's a question of attitude, of stance of the consumer. We have to make understand that this is not a good for free, because there is a performance, there is work behind that. Our House as well is discussing this for quite some time now, and I suppose that we will maybe communicate a comparable model in the future. The question is, will there be a paywall in Germany as a broad solution or not? We did an inquiry with managers of the big German newspapers, regional and non-regional, and 92% of these managers said, yes, we will have to introduce a paywall. One of the subjects of our discussion today is really paid content something that scares people, or can we still solve that problem? And what does it mean if we have a price tag on the different articles? For the Hamburger Morgenpost, for example, it is the case. No, sorry, it was not the Hamburger Morgenpost. I always get them mixed up. H&R as well does the same. What does it mean for the content? A question to the journalists here. What does it mean if you have a price tag on the articles in the internet? Well, if you really offer high quality, super quality, then you can also ask a certain price for it. That takes some time. More time than the other way around. But in the media sector, there are also people asking for quality. This is what I experienced during my time as a free journalist. These articles, really deeply researched, were the articles that people asked for. And we continued on that path in a very coherent way. This is a clear USP compared to others. Our subscription price is 580 euros, I can tell you here. We do not sell single articles because it would be too much administration work as a B2B. And we want to get into close contact with our target group in the hotel sector. So for Hospitality Inside, even though we are a small newspaper, I can now get interview partners that would not have accepted me as an interview partner before. Because people want to know what their position is, and they want to know the context of their publication. This is very, very important, and people are willing to pay for that because they know that next Friday they will read something about their colleague again. It is an assessment of the competitive situation. We do a sort of competitive evaluation of the sector. And for that you have to pay. But you have to continue. We have also paid news if there are CEO changement of post, and then according to American standards, we also make breaking news. Yes, the founding principle, the basic principle is the same. We have to do journalism in such a clear and accentuated way that we found our target group. It is not a question of do we do print media or digital media, but it's both. Mr. Nielsen, is that a concept that you could also replicate for your sector, or does it not work? Well, in principle, I do believe that the work we do has to be paid for. So I am following the principle of a pay war, and those who don't want to do it, they will really have a bad sleep. In the end, it will not work. There will always be some newspapers like that, for free newspapers, but they have a different business model and, in general, also a different quality to offer. Whereas there are also newspapers in Germany free of charge and having a lot of money to their. It's a problem of public newspaper or public radio and television. They have to do everything. They have to cover the entire population. If you have a clear target group, that what we do has also its price and is worth its price. I know how much time I have to spend in my office. I don't do that for free. Could you also imagine to have a price tag on your articles? No, we don't do that, but because it's not a strategy of our publishing house. But for you, it's not a problem. I think we should have to try it. I always like to try out things. We didn't do that in the past. Gruner and Jahr did not do that. We usually think about things for a very long time, then we discuss it for a very long time, and then in the end we want to do something perfect. In the era of the internet, this is not a good approach. We have to do also trial and error. A brief example. This year we had our first app. It's very sexy. It's classical print media, and now we have an app. And we only made secondary use of what we had already as a content. Then we did a F&E project with entrepreneurial development, and then we said that this is not sufficient. In the dummy development, we also get to a point where we see this is not sufficient, but we do not know if we can continue on that path. And if you really want to have an app store, you have to have answers to all the questions. That's what we do in January, and we didn't know what would happen. And now we have about 3,500 sales, only selling secondary content. We do not really do that usually. It was just a trial. It was trial and error, and now we will see what we can do with it. Every month you will have a new app? No, unfortunately not. One more question. I always ask myself, what about the contents if I put a price tag on it? Does the content you have to pay for get out of the website, for example? It's the same in print media and internet. The feedback is quite very direct and very quick. Would that not mean that you would lose diversity in your content? I do not think that what we sell for money in the App Store, we would have to draw them back from our website because the products do not always overlap. Because if there was something on Mallorca, for example, on our website there as well, you would have to look for it. And on the app, you can maybe buy it for €3.50. It's about buying a cappuccino at Starbucks, not more. At Welt Online, how important is traveling as a subject for you? And do you want to have travel subjects on your website and sell them? Well, traveling has always been an important subject for Die Welt am Sonntag and Welt on Sunday. We there have a strong travel section, also concerning advertising and selling advertisement. So I do understand what Mr. Brückmann just said. Newspapers magazines can maybe bring people to book a certain apartment or to book a certain ship if they want to go on a cruise and so on. So what do we do with the content if people have to pay for it? This is one of the reasons why I have always been in favor of pay models. I do believe, I'm deeply convinced that this makes the content and the products better if you have to pay for it, because there is a difference. If you only offer a product with the objective to get people into contact with it without having to pay for it, or if you want to get people to pay for something and to do that on a voluntary basis. You have to take a decision during a working day in a publishing house, and sometimes, although you want to have good quality, sometimes you decide to opt for quantity. For quantity rather than quality. So it is important as a publisher to say that you want to convince people to pay for a content. This is possible. There are many examples for that. In the high-end target group, for example, in mass media where we are, you said you wanted to have about 1,000 subscribers. In the part that is for free in Welt Online, there are 8.5 million people on our website per month. That's an incredible figure. So the pay model, of course, will have to deal with less. The number will be far lower than these 8.5 million. But we're not afraid of that, because a good report on a travel or a good service segment, or something amusing about traveling, for example, entertaining about traveling, this is an integrative part of a general interest offer we have. So I do believe that we will benefit from a pay model on our pages. Excuse me for interrupting you. We are a rather important group. We have a relevant market share. But if I look on Germany, traveling in these print media, travel will no longer play an important role. And this is also due to the fact that the travel industry has got used to having a certain platform, an oasis where their subjects are taken up, ITB, for example, Trans World, and so on. You know all that. I do not believe that in the next 5 to 10 years we will have a large coverage by the smaller regional newspapers. And hence, the industry has no longer a sufficient coverage for their products, for their subjects, and they have to ask themselves whether they're still able to compensate for these loss in coverage by whatever means, because these subjects are taken up by the internet, and are the platforms used for that are really relevant, are really important for us. You do not have any longer a forum that is important for the sector. I would like to come back to that, but Mr. Hartung had something to add. Well, on the one hand, we have quality journalism, and then you have the journalism for free. That was what has just been said, and I do not agree with that distinction. For example, we have private radio, private magazines, newspaper. You cannot say that there is quality journalism on the one hand and for free journalism on the other hand. Both can be quality and both can be rubbish. So you cannot really do that distinction. Excuse me, let me finish, please. Concerning the paywall, I believe that both models will coexist and will have to coexist, because we do not only have reports on travels. articles on travels. If, for example, a plane crashes, this is not an exclusive report of one media that will be everywhere in the media. And if you do that, if you cover that by a paywall, nobody will click on it. So you already have to decide what it is all about. Is it news of importance for everybody, or is it background reports, background information that you cannot get for free elsewhere? There you certainly have a chance to sell it to your reader. But if, for example, I turn on the radio in my car and I get these news for free, I cannot imagine that somebody would pay for such an information somewhere else. And this would mean that the platform would break down. Yes, I understood your argument against the paywall. If it is everywhere, you would not have any links on contents anywhere. No, it's not that easy. We have linkages, for example, for subscription magazines as well. Colleagues do that also for other services. We do not depend on in contents for free. We scan media in a large number of media every day, and I do not think that you can distinguish between, for example, daily newspapers. They do not have a monopoly on information, but you have print, and then you have, for example, radio and new forms of news providers from abroad. And I am very dubious if it is really possible in the German landscape to introduce a paywall in general, because there will be people who will be able to break down this wall. And it will not be exclusive either. So one thing is very clear. The PR-oriented rubbish online is growing. And more people, because of the easy access on the internet, start to write themselves, to publish something themselves. To publish is now a need of the masses. We, in the media, we still see ourselves as professionals and have a journalistic approach. It is really a general question, a basic question: how do I deal with content and with the value of content? And if it is on the level we're speaking about now, this will not work in the future. I think there's one question the audience here was most interested in. What is the path to follow to sell your contents? Is it exclusiveness? Is it quality? Many things can be exchanged, can be used 2 or 3 times in different publishing houses or whatever. For example, between 0 and 10, where do you stand concerning quality management for travel? For quality claims, it's not between 0 and 10, it's 0 to unterminable. And there are still possibilities, of course, to raise our quality standards. You said between 0 and 10. Well, I would say that we are somewhere around 8. Yet, all of a sudden, you will all certainly remember an article you have read in Die Welt, and you knew more about it than we, and you were cross with us. But in general, we have in this professional approach, we cannot maybe always fulfill our own claims concerning quality, but we have it. There's one point I would really like to underline once again. We do not have single contents hidden behind a paywall. Our product is not a single article. Our product is the newspaper Die Welt. And up to a certain level, it is for free. And if you want to use it in a more intensive way, we offer you the possibility of a subscription. We cannot say that there are certain articles that sell very well. What we sell is an overall artistic value, a brand, a feeling you get with our brand. This is what has been said, for example, also about Saison. the app. This is something we started to do also with the iPad, with the tablet. From the very beginning, we were present, Welt HD and Welt in general, by an app. All these articles you can read, you can also open with your own browser, and you do not have to pay for it. But the tablet app is the most successful in Germany, not only for media, but of all the apps you can buy in the App Store. Why is that so? It is because we offer a holistic approach, a general product. We offer something reliable, a reliable content, and behind this content is a certain performance, a certain work, and people are willing to pay for that work. It is not about just one article. So for traveling, it's not the same as for other parts of the internet, that exclusiveness is the buzzword, is the key factor. I do not believe that exclusiveness is the key factor for success. Inspiration, brain food, it doesn't have anything to do with exclusiveness. A beautiful language, fantastic images, all that is, of course, an information with a certain value in the travel sector as well. Of course, it is a good thing, as Bild, for example, to be the first to give away the information that Hartmut Medon is the new boss of the airport. The remark has been made without microphone. The interpreter hadn't heard. Anyway, it was a fantastic information. If the information as such is good news, that's something different. But it's about 50 seconds you have. And after 50 seconds, it's no longer exclusive. And at the end of the day, people do not really remember that the people from Bild Zeitung had this as a first information. But it is a good journalistic performance, and it shapes a certain brand. So the brand is very important. There are three ways of exclusiveness. You cannot have exclusiveness in the travel segment, for example. Exclusiveness does not always mean that you have it as the only one, but you have also an exclusiveness of serviceness and exclusiveness of target groups, as you have said, in a certain sector, in a luxury sector, for example. People who travel, for example, with their private jet, there you can make more money. We have our exclusiveness in the services. We package our things, and we want people to understand that it is worth paying some money for it. And we believe that this will be possible in print media as well, and we have to adapt to the digital changes. That means that we have to be present in tablets and in the internet, and that people will be willing to pay for it. If the Welt app is sufficiently well presented, then we will be successful. You just said, Mr. Brückmann, that print is still working rather well. You said that in the WATS, the environment also is a question of success. What is it exactly for you?
It's about relevant and well-done content that makes the reader interested in the product, and only in a second step do the readers register what our advertising customers are printing, and our advertising customers rightly want this message to translate into bookings or similar positive results for them. And this requires the readers to first look at the entire environment, take it seriously, and this can only be done if you have serious, relevant, important content. But what's important in this group here, we are talking so much about digital ways of making money. All of this is correct, but I would like to say, at least for the big publishing houses, that we have already tapped into all of the possibilities that exist. I can give you a current example. On the occasion of ITB, we have published Germany's largest travel magazine. By chance, I do carry it with me. It has 3.9 million editions, and I don't think that this is a bad thing, because so far nobody tried to try something new. We decided to do it. We decided to do it in a print version. This is our entire daily newspaper plus our weekly version. So it's a free of charge medium on the one hand and a for pay medium on the other hand. So 3.9 million volumes is quite a lot. It's 55 times a fully sold out Westfalen stadium, the big soccer stadium that we have. So this, if everybody bought one, so this is a huge dimension. And if you ask, was it worthwhile? I can say yes, it was. But that was my question. You said the environment is important. So let me rephrase the question. How important is the editorial office for the advertising customers? Is it a difficult topic? When do you say no to a potential customer? Well, it's always the issue of relevance. If a customer has a relevant topic, and I am in the lucky situation that those travel products can be published 100 times a year, so I would focus on partnership, and it doesn't mean that we're selling our content. Would you all agree? Is there a close link to your partners, or? Well, you just said there's too much PR crap everywhere in the media, and I think this is one of the big dangers that exist. I would say for us at Die Welt, or at least that's my perception, the situation has changed in the past years, and we've become a lot more aware of the fact how seriously we have to take the authenticity of our own content and the seriousness of our own content. We have to explain to the readers what is happening, what is going on. So if there is a trip that we report about with co-financing or support of a tour operator or a destination, we provide this information. This is information that we disclose. Sometimes it's the only way that's possible, and if this happens, we inform the reader about this, and I think the readers appreciate it. There are some who say, ha, we've always known it, they're doing it together with them, but all in all, it is perceived as transparent, and I think that's what's the decisive factor. Exactly what you were saying. The topic needs to be communicated on the basis of its relevance. The readers have a very, very good nose when mediums do something that's not directed at the reader but at the advertising customers. And when you cross that line, when you do that, it's a zero-sum game and nobody benefits, not even the advertising customers. Most advertising customers, most companies that want to communicate a message understand it. So if you work on a professional level, and I can only speak about our medium, if you professionally work with those who want to do advertising, then there are certain things that we don't do, and then there are certain things that we do, and we can convince the readers that it's a good thing, and then there are other things that we can convince the advertising customers of that it's not a good thing to do. I'd like to point out that there's a very important tightrope walk here in the travel industry. In the past years, I was able to observe that the tourism industry focused on bashing the print. Printing is out, social media, blogging, everything was being hyped. And I always ask myself, how is it possible that the print customers come to us and say, there's an interesting story, an interesting press release that we'd like you to follow. When you do that with Google, with Facebook, and out of home, then nobody says, can you do this or that? So we are providing added value for the industry. We are a great forum that inspires readers, that invites readers to have a closer look at the products that our sector of industry is producing. And I think this is something that is quite jeopardized when industry withdraws and only follows the digital approach. I don't want to say that they should not become involved in this field and be strategically positioned in this field, but I'd like to think that the debate should be more neutral and factual. Blogging, even though this isn't the main topic of our discussion, but I looked at the so-called leading travel bloggers of Germany and their internet presence, and I did not find one single blogger who could have shown an interesting professional reach. Blogging is interesting, but as far as the reach is concerned, apart from the few top people, if you have a very clear-cut target group, but as far as the mass market is concerned, there are no real relevant reaches in the German market, and I'd like that to come back into the debate. That's the paradox thing that you mentioned. The money goes online, but the advertisers want to be also seen in the print industry. So if you take away advertising money from the print industry and put it into online, and at the same time print is important from an editorial point of view, would you say that you are, sitting in the ditch that you are digging deeper and deeper yourselves? Well, yes, there are some that will die out, and at the end of the day there will be less providers than we have now. Well, what went wrong? Who made a mistake? Is it industry? Are they the bad guys? Is it the media who, were pushed too much into the defensive? Well, because of the increasing importance of the internet, things happened that changed everything, and I think it's wrong to, point the finger, but the editors are too slow. They are 3 times slower than their readers, their actual customers are. That's the problem. For 50 years, they earned a lot of money, and now, since 2000, we've had a crisis, and now these big vessels are becoming lopsided, and nobody is able to turn them around. Say something. You're one of the big vessels. Psst, I don't want to say anything. What do you want me to say? We're not too slow. Not at all. But you could be faster. You can always be faster. You could have more subscriptions. I mean, I don't want to say it's your fault or my fault. I don't want to enter into a blame game. Well, editors can be slow, and this is sometimes due to the fact that for a very, very long time they were living with quite a comfortable situation, a very nice business model, but come on, this doesn't really help us. What you're saying about bloggers. Bloggers exist. We've got them. They're relevant. We have to live with them. The world has become more diverse, richer, more colorful. There are some bloggers who are great, not only because they're nice people, but also because they're courageous. They venture out there. And I also think from a journalistic point of view, there are some real great treasure troves to be found, but there's also a lot of crap. But when I look at the print media and open up some newspapers, it's the exact same thing. So this is not anything I'd like to do. No blame game. I don't want to say they are too slow, they are too stupid, and at the end of the day, we end up saying we don't understand the internet. So I'm not saying it's somebody's fault. I'm just saying there are a lot of possibilities for readers to get the information they want and they need. If I'm interested in a cruise or a specific country, then I Google the thing I want to know, and then I find out that in addition to the classic media, there are a lot of other things, not just blogs, but there are other people who do great things in forums privately, and the tourism industry says, well, our marketing pot has a certain size, and now readers have a larger choice, and so everything is cascading down, and you end up getting less money. I mean, from an advertising point of view, it's a crisis. Yes, for 20 years, I worked with a specialized journalism, and I've seen that the marketing budgets have really been cut considerably, particularly when you look at what the big tourism companies and airlines, whether it's Air Berlin or Thomas Cook or whatever, what they are dealing with internally. They have a lot of problems. So you also know that they don't spend too much money on advertising. So the budgets are shrinking. And on the other hand, the possibilities of how that money can be spent is increasing. So possibly those who so far were living the good life are now those who have the biggest problem. I see that unfortunately we've come to the end of our time slot, and I know that we also have some questions in the audience. Let me ask one more question directed at all of you so that we can then enter into the interactive part. Let's say you have 3 wishes to the tourism or media industry. What would these wishes be? And then we can include the audience. For the big publishing houses, I would wish that there are more top managers who really see themselves as entrepreneurs with journalistic expertise. Do you have a wish? Or maybe 3? What would I wish for? I would wish that the current social media hype, Facebook and so on, becomes realistic again. There will be new hypes. I mean, we'll see that, and I think when a new hype arrives, that we should just be a little bit more relaxed, both in the media world as well as in the tourism world. I would wish that we really put the debate back on a technical level, that we're not driven by the hypes and that not everybody wants to, come on board because it's on vogue and at the same time forgets to critically question everything. I wish the publishing houses to be more courageous, to be more interested in trying things out. I think a lot can be done in that respect, and we are now called upon to really prove our relevance. And I also hope that we have a better marketing for the print sector, because we have to clearly say we, with a communication background, have really not done the most stellar job in the past 10 years. I only have one wish. I would wish that both for the customers and readers, the awareness continues to exist that what we are doing is worth some money as a marketing source or advertising source and as a source of information. It can only work when you have a mix of, sales and advertising, and when you're dealing with people. And here I agree with you. Sometimes I'm in negotiations where you have somebody who is from a destination who wants to be presented in the print medium, and at the same time they tell me that they only want to focus on the Facebook side. So that doesn't always work. So I'd wish for, a little more reasonable approach sometimes. I would wish that the travel industry continues to remember how good of a performer the print media are when it comes to fulfilling the objectives of the tourism industry. And I hope that very soon everybody has a tablet computer, because they are great media carriers. And I also wish that with our Welt online payment model, we are successful enough so that others are encouraged to also follow that track. And a fourth wish, I would wish to have a 25th hour per day, because everything that we're doing is so much fun and so interesting at the moment, so that there's just not enough time. I think it's a great time to work in this sector of industry. Well, I hope your other 3 wishes are a little bit more realistic than the 25th hour of the day. But now, are there questions in the audience? If you have questions or wishes, this would be the right moment to make them heard. Do you see a journalistic dangers when it comes to paid content that maybe, if the user has to pay directly that they also say, what's in it for me? What's the added value? So don't you see the danger that you very much focus on services more and not on writing things that don't make money immediately? If you don't, like the Mallorca app where people tend to spend 350 or something because they're traveling to Mallorca, whereas print journalism is mostly more broad-based. I don't think that service-oriented apps destroy travel journalism. It's just one offer. I'm quite humble as a journalist. I try to deliver to the people the things they want. I'm a journalist who is convinced of what he's doing, but as the editor-in-chief, I don't want to, do everything I want to do. I also have to do things that people want to read. We did a cover story on Mallorca, and we said we don't want to do a documentary on it because there aren't a lot of new things that we can tell people, but a lot of new things were developed in Mallorca, so we just listed some addresses, and people bought the magazine like crazy. I'm afraid we have to come to a close. The doors have already opened. Are there really urgent questions that need to be discussed? If not, I would like to express my gratitude to the panelists. Thank you for your frank and open words. Thank you to the audience for your interest, and enjoy the rest of ITB.